if you have performed the most painful, heroic sacrifice in human history, and rather than being credited for it, you're denied all credit, and you have the world's most popular religion actually giving credit to a myth that somehow derived from Dionysus and Odysseus, it's got to be major irritating. In the end, it all turns out beautifully for Dowd and for the remnant of his people. But in the meantime, it is horrific, and I can tell you that father and son are none too pleased. But nonetheless, as he is completing the 22nd Mizmor, he's able to now go forward in time and know what he has accomplished with Yahweh who made it possible. So he writes, and this is Mizmor 22:22. I have chosen to continually recount, providing a written record of Shafar, of your name, doing so to my brethren within the midst of the summoned community who have been called out, so as to radiate your brilliant source of enlightenment and halal brag about you. Mizmor 22:22. Yeah, it's a fascinating statement. So here is Dowd. He has chronicled his own participation in Pesach and Matzah, right down to personal and graphic detail, explaining how painful and humiliating it was to endure this. He is now on this side of Bokurim, and the first thing he wants to do is to say, I've done this. I have provided a written record of what occurred. It's amazing that you could have the single most credible event ever executed in human history.
Mankind. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got nothing in the history of humankind where you had a detailed presentation of what would occur 1,000 years before it occurred. But you read the first 6 or 7 Mizmor, you read the 89th Mizmor, you read Mizmors 20 through 30, and you read Yeshayah, Zechariah, Yirmiah, they all tell the same story. And the story is that Dowd, Yahweh's Mashyach and Ben, son, his Zarowa, the sacrificial lamb, is going to serve as the Pesach Ayil, and he's going to fulfill each of the 7 Moed Mikra, including Matzah. There are hundreds upon hundreds of prophetic declarations in the only book of credible future predictions that state by name that it will be Dowd who will fulfill these monumental events, the fulfillment of the first 4 Mikra, and then he will return to fulfill the final 2. There is no event in all of human history that gets as much prophetic attention as this. And so it's the single most credible act ever performed. And it is performed at the crossroads of civilization. In Jerusalem, Israel, right in front of not only God's people, Yisrael, Yahudah, but in front of the noses of the most powerful empire that humanity may have ever known. And despite all of that, from the time that he wrote these prophecies, with the exception of the other prophets, Zechariah, Yirmiah, and Yeshayah, for example, not one single person over 3,000 years actually proclaimed that he had done this and explained why. Why he wanted to do it, why Yahweh allowed him to do it, and how each one of these prophecies told the same story. Not one person. And worse than that, the world's most popular religion, based upon a man who admitted he was demon-possessed, all of Dowd's accolades, all of his titles, and what he had done and he created a fictional character, Jesus Christ, by projecting everything of Dowd onto this fictional character, claiming every prophecy that mentions Dowd as the fulfillment, and says, no, it was my fictional misnomer, Jesus Christ. And the world bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. And then to make matters worse, Jews who didn't even have rabbis at the time, the first actually proclaimed rabbi was Paul, the first person in recorded history to use the title rabbi. He used it of himself. He says he was the best of them. The term rabbi only began to emerge thereafter. And the most famous of them, the one that is the father of Judaism, Rabbi Akiva, he is known for his false Messiah, Bar Kokhba. And he foisted his false Messiah, Bar Kokhba, on the world to counter the claims that Paul and Peter et al. Had made of the mythical Jesus Christ. The only reason they did it. And in doing so, they not only denied that Dowd had fulfilled Pesach Matzon B'Kodim, they created a false Messiah who led people away from God and led them away from their land, caused the destruction of Judea, the renaming of Judea, the diaspora, and the abuse that they would suffer under the Roman Catholics, leading to the Holocaust. But there was no rabbinic Judaism and no rabbis prior to this occurrence. So Paul didn't just create the lie that is Christianity by misappropriating everything of Dowd and creating this fictional character, Jesus Christ. But because of what he did, Rabbi Akiva came up with a false Messiah to respond to this growing religion that began in Israel with Paul. And as a result, not only would Roman Catholics and Gentiles come to despise Jews, torture and harass Jews, rob them, dehumanize them for better part of 20 centuries, both Jews and Goyim would lose their souls over it. He would preclude everyone from knowing God and engaging in a relationship with Him, knowing their Savior. So this is a really big deal. And Dowd is finally saying, listen, I have recorded this story. I have told you what is going to happen. And if you read through the first 30 Mizmor, they all tell the same story. Every one of them. 22 is just in your face, graphic. Says, I've done it. And I've also told you that I was able to do it because I knew and proclaimed Yahweh's name. Dowd is acknowledged as the Mashyach. He is acknowledged as the Son of God. He is acknowledged as the Chosen One. He is acknowledged as the Firstborn. He is acknowledged as the Zarowa, strong arm, and Sacrificial Lamb. He is the Shepherd. He is the King. He is the King of Kings. And he is on record saying, I provided that testimony to in writing and proclaimed your name. And I want to ask you, how many times will you find Yahweh's name written out in the Babylonian and Jerusalem Talmud and in the Zohar and the rest of the books that comprise Judaism?
None.
Zero.
Zero.
How many times do you find Yahweh's name in the Christian New Testament?
Zero.
So here's a guy that Yahweh said is right and gave every accolade that there is. The one person when Yahweh said, this is my preferred individual. There's no one I care about more than this man. And he proclaimed and spoke, wrote Yahweh's name, and all the people that want to claim power and authority with God never use it. Who do you think's right?
Yahweh.
So I have chosen to continually recount and providing written testimony while always proclaiming your name to my brethren within the midst of the summoned community who have been called out, so as to radiate your brilliant source of enlightenment and brag about you. I have said numerous times that Dowd is the principal star, the role player, if you will, the main participant in all 7 Moed Mikra. It's not just Pesach, where he's the famed Passover lamb. It's not just Matzah, where his soul takes our crimes, our guilt into Sheol, depositing it there. It's not just firstborn children, where Yahweh's firstborn is reunited with the set-apart spirit and re-enters heaven. It is also Shabuah. And on Shabuah is when Dowd was enlightened and enriched, became more brilliant, empowered, as the symbol of what that day represents, as the symbol of what will happen to all of us that are members of the covenant. And so he is the first to fulfill Shabuah. He is also the basis of Taruw'ah. As those engaged in Taruw'ah, our mission is to herald what we have learned about Dowd, the roles that Dowd has played as our Savior, so that when Dowd returns on Yom Kippurim in year 6000 Yah, 2033 CE, that there's a remnant of Yisrael ready to greet Father and Son. And then he becomes the king, the Malach of Sukkah thereafter. All 7 of the Moed Mikra are about Dowd, with Dowd, for Dowd, by Dowd. So Yisrael's most acclaimed shepherd and king, Yahweh's Messiah and Son, recorded, related, recounted, declared, and proclaimed, God Shem, his name.